Our third and final session on the design and detailing of the reinforced concrete pile caps. So today, what we plan on doing is going through two numerical examples. In our first example, we're going to take a look at a pile cap with some piles subjected just to axial loads. In example number two, we're going to also look at a pile cap that has axial loads, but this time we're going to include a bending moment on it. Just a couple things as a preface to the examples. What we're going to cover here is the assumption we made in the other parts with respect to the type of pile cap. That is a rigid pile cap where the piles are connected to the underside of the pile cap with basically a pin connection. So no transfer of moment, just the axial forces and shear forces go down into the pile in general. Okay, so for other cases where you have a fixed head, you consider that pile cap just like a continuous beam. You can calculate what the moments are and then transfer those moments down into the piles. That would give you a distribution then, depending on the soil, the depth of the pile, what the actual maximum bending moment would be in the pile. And there's a number of software out there that would do that for you. The other thing I wanted to mention, and you'll see this in our upcoming slide, that in cases where the ACI 318 requirements are applicable, and that's mostly for bending and certain types of one-way and two-way shear, we are going to use the most updated information given in the 2019 edition of ACI 318. Okay? In cases where we have shear and it's not covered explicitly in ACI 318, we're going to go back to what's in the CRSI design guide for pile caps, because really there's nothing else out there that fills the gap for us to design and detail the pile caps by. And I'll point that out, as we go through the examples, what's been updated, what's different, and you're going to see now in a lot of cases what had worked before may not necessarily work now. But we'll discuss all that and talk about some things that we can do to circumvent this. So given that preface, let's go ahead and start then with our first example after we again talk about the different building codes that we're going to be referencing. It's the latest stuff as we did in the first two parts. The 2024 International Building Code, ASCE 7 2022, the 2019 edition of ACI 318, and the examples are going to come directly from the design guide we have. Now, I'm not going to follow those, as I had mentioned, directly, and I'll point out the differences. One other thing I'd like to preface, and we talked about this last time when we went through the equations, that in the design guide, they do subtract off the weight of the pile cap for bending and shear. That's certainly permitted to do. That's a weight that's there that counteracts all of the other forces, and you could certainly do that. However, I don't do that in the examples that you see here today. And that's for a couple of reasons. Mainly because the equations get so long and so complicated, and especially when we're trying to do this, virtually, we'd like to make this as clear as possible for our attendees. And I didn't want to include all of that extra baggage, so to speak, when we go through the equations and see how to calculate all of the important information. But like I said, if you certainly want to include that, by all means do so.